Thanks very much, Kat. I don't know about how everybody's sitting there. I felt but the hair was standing up in the back of my neck when Kat was talking about Ravenscraig. And it's great to feel that passion from people who are engaged in this debate. And two wee points for what Kat said. The day after that poll was released, the headlines was 10 days to save the Union. To save the Union from what? From a democratic process where we exercise our right to self-determination. And the other thing that Kat talked about was our young people that leave Scotland, the joblessness. In 2 weeks, on the 24th October, with my daytime job, I'm going out to Canada. And I'm going out to Canada not to work with Canadians, I'm going out to work with expats. Our expat community in Canada is phenomenal. They're everywhere. They're captains of industry, heads of trade unions. They're some of the top kiddies in Canada. And they all say the same thing to me last year when I was out. Patrick, why did we have to leave our home to come here for opportunities? And I think Kat spoke very eloquently about that. I want us to keep our talent and to let people like Kat thrive in our own country and let us benefit from it rather than places like Canada, Australia and New Zealand. Okay, our final speaker this evening is Robin McAlpine. And after hearing Robin, I was going to join his Fusiliers. He was that good the last time I heard him. He's a writer and a spokesperson for the Common Weal project. He's also editor of the Scottish Left Review. And he's also a great example of what Kat talked about the way all these groups have sprung up, come to the fore, and had the courage, and as Jim Siller says, the audacity to stand up and say, I want more for me and my family and my country. Please give a welcome to Robin McAlpine. Thank you.
Hairs in the back of your neck, a bit optimistic, no? Can I just say that, because the last time I saw Willie was at Glastonbury, way more coherent than I remember him. And the last time that I saw Janet was in the middle of a large-scale post-apocalyptic water pistol fight. So I know in itself sounds quite strange because she's way less psycho than I remember from that day as well. But I did a wee, I didn't plan to tell you this, but I just had a wee flashback about something I completely forgot, and which I've obviously been repressing deep down in my subconscious for years, which is my father stood in, for election in Dumfries. That would be 87, so it was against Hector Munro. So I was 14, I think. No, a good time to be forced onto election leaflets. And I was sitting there, suddenly this flashback. I saw it again, kind of 10 years after it happened, and had a mullet, a shiny silver suit with his sleeves rolled up and red patent leather shoes. And that went into every one of your houses. And I so thought I looked Miami Vice. So I looked like a dick. Anyway, that just came back to me there just now. I was just a bit horrified. Right, what we're going to do, I'm fairly confident in a kind of Scottish way, which is to say 2-0 up with 5 minutes to go. I'm not that confident, but I'm fairly confident that this looks like if we keep going and we keep carrying on the work that we've done, we are going to win this. And I'm reassured when I see today that the other side's strategy literally goes day by day. Wednesday Miliband, Thursday Cameron, Friday Farage, Saturday the Orange Order. What have they got on Sunday? A video message for Jimmy Savile? I mean, how do they think this is going to help them? They're in disarray and panic. And in fact, I think that one day when they're writing the history of the British Empire, following Alan Cochrane's columns from the start of this campaign to the end will be like some sort of psychoanalysis for the collapse of empire. It started so cocky and swaggering, and it ended up coherent, incoherent, paranoid and mad. That is, I think, a tale about what's happened here. So let's assume that what I always believed from day one, that most of the people in this country are ready to take it back. They just need to believe that they can do something decent with it once they get it back. And I think we've persuaded enough of them. Well, not yet, but I think we will have. And I think they're there. And I think if we keep working, we can do this. And so I say to end, I think probably you lot are quite persuaded, but let's start thinking about what we're going to do with it. So I don't know what I'm going to pick here. I'm going to pick a random, in fact I don't know how many I'm going to do. I'm just going to see if folk look like they're getting bored. But what we want to do once this is over is kick off immediately a question which is not which party do you want to support in the aftermath of this, but what do you want them to do? What are the things that we can get done after this is over? So here's just some thoughts. We want to kick this off in a big national conversation, and what I think we would like to do as Commonweal and with others is produce this up, take this as a list of demands, a statement of expectation. This is what we fought for. This is what the rebellion was for. This is what we freed our country for. Are you going to be this? And what I'd like to think is that at the top of that list will be democracy. Because if there's one thing that has amazed me about this campaign, we've won it because of proper democracy, not selective democracy, parliamentary Westminster democracy. Pick between two of us will disappoint you, but you can pick the other one in 5 years. Not that kind of democracy, proper democracy. People sit in town halls where bluntly they're close enough to throttle you if they don't agree with what they're saying. And believe me, it's come close in a couple of the meetings that I've done. A place where people can ask you questions and demand an answer that suits them, not watching Question Time on a Thursday night and be grateful if they get any kind of a half answer out of their politicians at all. We've got to take this democracy and keep it going, because I firmly believe that it's one of the biggest challenges. We face the corruption of power. Westminster's the most corrupt parliament in Europe. And I'm going to be careful what I mean by that. I don't mean that they've got a lot of backhanders. You know, the Greeks, they understand their parliament as the backhanders, and the Spanish, and not that kind of corruption. The kind of corruption where the whole thing is structured to let in arms companies, tax-avoiding corporations, a landed aristocracy elite, who bizarrely still exempt hunting and shooting from tax, because it's not a business, even though it's a profitable business. That's the country that we live in, a corrupted parliament. We need to change that. And I think that the only two options we've got, the only thing that can face down power right now is democracy, real democracy. So top of my list, I think, is proper local democracy. Let's get communities governing themselves. We don't have any local government in this country. We have local authorities which would be more accurately described as territorial delivery units. That's what they are. They're not democratic, they're not local, they're just ways for senior managers to manage you against your will. So let's get rid of, well, no, let's build underneath them real local democracy so that people can start making decisions about their own towns, their own communities, their own places, and their own priorities. And there's so many important things that come from this, not least of which is growing up, stopping whining and getting the habit of fixing things. Another thing that we get out of this is a whole new generation of people who are active in politics. Janet gave you some of the stats about France. One that she didn't give you was, it's not just how many councillors there are to people. See each round of elections. 1 out of 78 people in France stands for election. Ordinary people are politicians in that country. It's normal. Politicians are ordinary people in that country. It's normal. And so what you have is not our system of politics, where our parties are really just a system for appoint a researcher, give them a bit of time, they become an MSP, they appoint a researcher in an endless loop, an incestuous loop that goes round and round and round and excludes all new talent. In these countries, it's normal for someone to start as a community politician, to become good, to learn skills, to become confident, and to step up to the next level. And all the way up, eventually, to be possibly the leader of the country. Not because they got a job when they were a kid in an internship with a political party, but because they cared about their community and they built it up. And let's have participatory government at the national level. We don't need any more expert groups, little groups of people that get sent off in a room where everyone in the room earns over £70,000 and where everybody agrees with each other before they go in. Because every time we do that, they come out of the room and they say, it's okay, we've all discussed it and we agree there are definitely weapons of mass destruction. Definitely there. Or no, there's no way that deregulating the banks can go wrong. We've got to stop this process of closed government by elite. We've got to get participative government where, for example, if something like that happens, what we automatically do is set up a citizens' jury. People selected at random from the population. And the experts, I'm a big fan of expertise. Learn your trade, absolutely. But you don't make the decisions. You come along and you talk to this panel of ordinary people and you say, this is what we think the answer is. And the ordinary people can listen to that and say, maybe, let's ask somebody else too. That's the kind of participative government that I want to see in this country. Because if we can get that right, we can do amazing things. The next thing on my list for definite is I cannot tolerate for another day being the only country in Europe that doesn't own its own national grid. It's insane. Every single other country in Europe, all 27 other countries in the European Union own their national grid. The European Union even encourages it, which means that if we want to nationalise our national grid, it's very easy. The EU would say, fine, absolutely, definitely. The cost wouldn't be much because they've already been compensated. And as soon as we've got it, we're in control of our energy system. And it's what we can do with that. Because you take the model, you'll be familiar with this down in this part of the world. Wealthy landowner, big corporation. Big corporation says to wealthy landowner, can I rent a bit of your land? Because that wind, which incidentally, it's all of our wind, that wind that flies over the top of your land is useful to us, so we'll give you plenty of money for it. Great, that's magic. Right now, they go abroad and they say to the Chinese corporation, give us cheap built infrastructure. You just give us those generating machines. We'll bring them over, and the Chinese companies are brilliant. And that's what you get. You get a corporation that makes money from a landowner who's making money, and all of them are buying their stuff from a Chinese corporation that makes money, and what do we get? Apart from the fact there's no control over our energy system, we get no say in its planning. It's an amazing thing that I don't think people understand. We found a magic stone in the car park that gave you endless free energy. We could not demand that anybody connects it to the national grid, because we don't own it. We could say, Scottish Power, please, and they could say no. Scottish and Southern Electricity, please, and they could say no. That's mad. How can you plan an energy system based on the commercial interests of two private companies? So we've got to take back the ownership, and we can do it the other way. If there's land that we think is good for a wind farm, we buy it. Compulsory purchase order, and it's our land. We get the money from it. Once we build those, and then we can get a national company or lots of local companies to build the energy generation and storage. I'm not time to talk about that now, but a big important part of it. And once they've done that, we can decide where we manufacture the technologies. We can say, no, we will build all of this technology in this country, creating tens of thousands of really good jobs. And believe me, you cannot lose. The energy markets are rigged. You cannot lose. All of the costs get passed on to the consumer plus. It's a formula that guarantees that if you build a wind farm, you can't lose money. If you build a power station of any description, you can't lose money. So why don't we say, hey, we can't lose money. Why don't we do it for us? So we could take our energy back into collective ownership. We could set up a national investment bank. We published a paper on this today, and I think it's an incredibly important paper. It explains how we can invest in the future. If we were to set up a national investment bank, all we would have to do is capitalise it for maybe £1 billion a year for 5 years. And the way that banking works, if we had £5 billion of capital in the bank, that would enable us to lend £100 billion to the public and private sector in Scotland over, say, 15 years. It's a massive investment. And what's really important about this is if you look at all the investment that's taking place in Britain today, all the public investment, all the private investment, and all the personal investment, and if you subtract from that depreciation, how much you need to pay just to keep going, and a little bit for the expansion of the number of population, the result is zero. We are not investing enough to stand still in Britain. And that's hardly surprising. Every single other country in Europe invests significantly more than we do. We are the worst. And it's really interesting because I say to the left, let's steal the term investment back. Go and look it up in the dictionary. The expenditure of effort, time and money now in the belief that the future can be better. Wow, that sounds a hell of a lot like the politics that I believe in. Investment is our idea. Let's take it back. Let's set up a national investment bank and let's invest in our people, our infrastructure and our industry. And we can really do it. And if we don't have the industry that we want, let's be creative. We propose an idea called a national mutual company. So let's say that, well, let me give you an example of one of the things that we should be looking at in Scotland. The future of transport is hydrogen. Hydrogen is way better than carbon, which is currently what we use for all of our transport power. It's more dense in its energy and it's a renewable, so you can get the electricity to produce it. We're not probably going to be a major car manufacturer in Scotland, but I'll tell you what we could be. We could be the major manufacturer of the hydrogen batteries that are going to power these cars because we have that expertise in our universities now. We have the engineering expertise in our country and we have a remarkable amount of renewable energy which would enable us to create hydrogen which would help to fuel these batteries. Nobody's coming to do it because it's a long-term investment project and God knows Britain doesn't invest for the long term. So we don't have anyone that's doing that. Should we just sit back and say, oh, that would have been nice? As far as I'm concerned, we sure as hell shouldn't. So why don't we look at setting up national mutual companies? This would be a company, a private sector company that we would set up, which every citizen in Scotland would be given one non-tradable share. So it becomes a company democratically owned and shared by us all. It could borrow like any other big private company. It can invest like any other big private company, and it could decide to create an industry in hydrogen battery or biomass harvesting or a large container port in the north of Scotland to capture the Arctic trade, which is about to come from Asia. Remember, Asia's 40% quicker to come from Asia to Europe via Scotland than it currently is. The minute they go all the way through the Panama Canal, now that the Arctic's melted, if we can do it in a sensitive way, we can be a key trading hub for Britain. Or we could build hydrogen-powered eco-icebreakers to help that trade over the Arctic, or anything else that we think is a national possibility. We can invest to do these things. And along with an industrial policy, we can seriously look at getting full employment in an industry sector which is much more dominated by manufacturing, high skilled, which means it'll be a high pay sector. And if we do that, we will resolve all of our problems of taxation, public finances and investment in public services. Because we do not have a problem with lack of tax or too much expenditure in public services. It's purely a result of far too much in-work poverty in this country. 50% of the working population are so poor that they're not net contributors to the tax system. That's not how it should be. If any of you don't know this stat, and I do it so many times, I'm getting sick of it myself. The average salary in Scotland, £25,000. The average salary of the poorest 10% of people in Scotland is £6,000. The average salary in Norway is £45,000. The average salary of the poorest 10% of workers in Norway is £25,000. The poorest 10% of people in Norway earn exactly the same average salary as the entire working population of Scotland. We are the second lowest paid economy in the advanced world. Okay, so we've got the economy working, that was only a wee example. We've got over 30 or 40 different tools alone in our industrial strategy paper which explain how we could do an industrial policy and create things. Oh, I'm only halfway through the book. Right, let me give it another couple and I'll sit down. I don't talk about welfare. Welfare is an American phrase which means something like money we give to rubbish people. That's not what I want. I want a system of social security where every one of us who lives in the society, by dint of being a citizen of that society, is secure and is safe in their life. We can do that. What we would say is a fairly straightforward, calm series of reforms to welfare can fix everything. One, we need to get to a living wage immediately. If we made a living wage, it would immediately save £250 million on tax credits. Again, this is all in papers on our website, allofusfirst.org and in the library. £250 million in tax credits. Now, that gives us plenty of money to subsidise some of the smaller employers who will struggle with that, particularly in areas of low margin such as tourism. We can help them with the cost of a living wage, but dear God, Tesco can suck it up. So we've saved all of that money, and we've got some spare money to put into that. Then we've got to get rid of the other point of insecurity, the 0 hours contracts. We cannot live like this anymore. If you work, you must know at the end of the month that you have an absolute minimum amount of work, of income. Now, I'm all for flexible working. I know it works for a lot of people, and a lot of people with caring responsibilities are grateful for some flexibility. Great. Have all the flexibility you want, but over the end of the month, you should still have an average. And if an employer isn't capable of managing work over the month to make sure that its employees get a minimum income, a guaranteed minimum income, then they should be made to improve their skills so that they can. It cannot be right that people don't know if they can feed their family at the end of the month. Once we've done these and a couple of other things, we can move towards a citizen's income. A citizen's income where every single member of society gets a simple payment, a single payment, which is enough to just survive on. Everybody. We replace unemployment benefit. We replace disability benefit, although they would have a top-up. We replace child credits, we replace tax credits, and we replace the tax allowance that wealthy people have in their tax. So it's actually neutral, it doesn't cost anything. Everybody gets one flat payment, which means that no matter what, they're secure in life. It's an incredibly efficient system, and it's an incredibly fair way of doing things, and it's an incredibly redistributive system, because once you have it, all you have to do is every penny you put on tax, put it on the working family's tax, on the citizen's income, and it spreads wealth around our economy incredibly effectively. Housing. Do 2 more. 3 more. 2 more. Housing. I don't know if you know this, but over the last 20 years in Germany, house prices didn't rise at all. Not at all. They control their house prices because they consider a house to be somewhere that you live in. And they think the first instance is to make sure that secure ability to live in a nice house is the prime concern. And another thing that's interesting is that in Germany, young people wouldn't dream of a millstone of a mortgage because they know that their life's going to change and they're going to move on. And why would they have a mortgage? Because in Germany, they have access to absolutely first-rate public sector rental housing. Better than you can get in the private sector in this country. Made in these wonderful German house factories, high environmental impact houses which are incredibly efficiently assembled. We can do this because, like energy, housing generates revenue. If you build houses, you get rent, and you get rent for 50 years if we build decent housing. And can I say we used to build decent housing? I don't know if I don't watch it, but I have seen it from time to time. Homes Under the Hammer, daytime telly. This is what happens when you work at home. And what's really interesting is there's a programme in which people buy and sell second-hand houses and do them up and put them over. And it's quite interesting because every time they get to a council house, they say, of course, this is a much better build standard than average because it's a public sector housing. That's what we used to do. We used to build public sector housing with bigger rooms, better build and longer lasting high quality housing. You see them out there, they all stand and they're still good houses today. We can do this again. We can create German style house factories that build this in the public sector, and since we know that all the cost of this is going to come back, we do it in a mortgage, borrow over 30, 40-year mortgage styles and build as many houses as we want. There's no limitation. If we're borrowing over 30 or 40 years against the rental that comes from these houses, build as many as we want. And use these houses not only to create good housing for a whole new generation of Scots of every sort, and also we can use them to break down the segregation, again, so that if you have a high quality housing, young professionals will live next to other people in public sector housing without stigma. We can do that, and we can also use it to control house prices, because we have to. We cannot allow house prices to rise and rise. It's a trick which redistributes wealth from those without money to those with it. Remember, rising house prices don't help people with one house. Rising house prices help people with 2 or more houses. That's how it works. We can do that in housing. And I'm going to give you one left field and probably sit down. There's so many more. Oh, they're all in the book. allofusfirst.org. You can get the book. It's all in that. One more, just to show a statement of intent. Tell people what kind of a country that we want to be. Not only how we can manage it better, how we can fund it better, how we can organise it better, but a statement of what we want to be in the world. What I want to do is see us use a lot of our international development budget and a chunk of our NHS budget and to build something which is not just for us, in fact not mainly for us. Use all that expertise in life sciences and medical research in our universities, which I can promise you is absolutely globally first rate, to create a national patent-free drugs company. If we just use that money and we create a company, a research centre, which says we're going to create medicines that help the world, that help us, but we're going to do it without patents in the public domain. It will take so much cost and pressure off our NHS, but that's peanuts compared to what it will do to the developing world. We can say to every country in the world, all the developing countries, your medicines that you pay so much for from these bandit pharmaceuticals companies, make them yourself. Here's the recipe. Build a factory, make the pills, cure your own country. This is a gift from Scotland. This is a gift from the people of Scotland to you, because we too recognise what it's like to be screwed over by big corporations, and we too want a world in which that is not how your health is handled. We can do this. We can do this and so much more. We can do anything we want to, within the limits of international law, but we can do anything that we want to with one thing: power. This is the strange thing, that this campaign has oddly not thrown up enough, because what gives you power? Not dependence. Dependence never gave anyone power. Independence gives you power. Independence gives you power because if we are independent, our small, well, medium-sized country of 5 million people, your voice is 12 times louder. When you say that's not good enough, it echoes 12 times louder into the Parliament. The politicians hear it in their ear 12 times louder. Because in a small country, we can hold them to account much better than we can in a big country. Independence gives you power. It leaves us free to try things, free to do things. It lets us be free to imagine a possibility of something better. And that's why when people keep saying to me, well, you're not a colony and you're not an oppressed nation, so can you really call this freedom? And I say, well, maybe not, but I tell you what, see come the 19th, it's bloody well going to feel like it. Thank you.